Have you ever stopped to think about the invisible scaffolding holding up our modern world? This huge, complex network that's always working kind of behind the scenes, keeping us safe, healthy, connected across borders.
A fascinating concept.
Well, today, we're doing a deep dive into that very architecture.
Okay.
You sent us a really interesting stack of sources, articles, reports, even some personal notes, all focused on international organizations.
Yes, quite a collection.
So our mission here is to basically pull out the most important bits, the key insights, give you a shortcut to being, genuinely well-informed about these global bodies.
Bodies that really do touch everyone's lives every single day, often in ways we don't even realize.
Exactly.
And we're not just going to list them off, right? We want to dig into why they were formed.
Right. The origin stories.
Often right out of major global crises. And how those original reasons, those mandates, still shape what they do today. Look at, where they're based, who's involved.
And maybe some surprising achievements.
Definitely some surprising achievements.
You might find out about, say, the oldest UN agency you didn't know existed, or organizations that actually won Nobel Peace Prizes.
And how India fits into this picture, it plays a really significant role in, almost all of them.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this global puzzle.
Great. Where should we start?
When you talk global architecture, there's one player that looms largest, right? The United Nations.
Absolutely. The UN is the anchor.
Where do we even begin with something that huge?
Well, it's the ultimate intergovernmental body. Its purpose is incredibly broad. Think international peace and security, championing human rights, driving social and economic development, upholding international law, delivering humanitarian aid. It's the world's main stage for dialogue.
Multilateral action.
Exactly.
And the origin story, as you mentioned, is key. It came directly out of the ashes of World War II, officially formed October 24th, 1945. The whole point was to stop another world war from happening.
Replacing the League of Nations, which hadn't quite managed that.
No, sadly not.
Yeah.
The idea itself came out of the Yalta Conference, then finalized in San Francisco. It really is the platform for nations to just talk.
And its reach is, immense. Headquarters in New York, of course, but big offices too in Geneva, Vienna, Nairobi.
Right.
With 193 member states, that's pretty much every country on Earth.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, India wasn't just an early member, it was there from the very beginning. A founding member.
A founding member, okay. And the UN structure itself, the main parts.
You've got the General Assembly, that's where every country has a voice.
The big debating hall we often see.
That's the one. Then the Security Council, probably the most powerful body.
With the 5 permanent members and that famous veto power.
Yes, the P5. That veto was meant to keep the major powers aligned after the war.
But it causes gridlock sometimes, too, right? That's always being debated.
Constantly. Big reform discussions around that. Then there's the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, the International Court of Justice for Legal Disputes.
And the Secretariat, which is the administrative arm. Oh, and the Trusteeship Council. But that's been inactive since '94. Its job was basically done.
Okay. And India's role today, beyond just being a founder.
It's very active. India is one of the biggest contributors of troops to UN peacekeeping missions.
Right, I read that.
And it's a major voice pushing for UN reforms, especially trying to get a permanent seat on the Security Council. It's part of the G4 group pushing for that.
With Japan, Germany, and Brazil. Okay.
Yeah.
So from the UN's wide scope, let's maybe zoom in on the organizations that prop up the global economy. We have to start with the IMF, the International Monetary Fund.
Right, the IMF. A core financial institution.
Yeah.
Its main job, keeping the global monetary system stable.
How does it do that mainly?
Primarily by giving short-term loans to countries that are having trouble balancing their payments, economic difficulties.
And offering advice.
And providing expert advice on economic policy.
Right.
It's one of the original Bretton Woods institutions.
Bretton Woods. So again, born from that post-World War II moment. Exactly. Formed July 1944 at that famous conference.
The goal was explicitly to stop another Great Depression, right? Avoid those currency wars that happened in the 30s.
Yes. Foster financial cooperation after the war. Its headquarters are in Washington, D.C.
And its funding, how does that work? Is it just donations?
No, it's quite specific. All 190 member countries pay in financial quotas.
Okay.
And here's the key part. Those quotas also determine how much voting power each country gets.
Ah, so not one country, one vote, like the UN General Assembly.
No, it's weighted by contribution. And India is a founding member here, too. And importantly, it actually took loans from the IMF back in 1991 during a major balance of payments crisis.
Right, that was a critical moment for India's economy. It shows the practical impact.
It definitely.
But those loans, they often come with strings attached, don't they? The famous IMF conditions.
They do. That's a major point of discussion, even criticism sometimes. These conditions, often called structural adjustment programs, might involve things like government spending cuts or specific economic reforms.
Designed to fix the economy, but potentially painful.
They can be. Critics argue they sometimes hit the poorest hardest or impose policies that might not be the best fit locally. It's a complex balance.
Understandable. Okay, sticking with Bretton Woods, let's turn to its sibling institution, the World Bank.
Right, the World Bank, often mentioned together with the IMF, but different. It's not really a bank in the way we usually think of one.
How so?
It's actually a group of 5 international financial institutions. Their combined goal is to help developing countries.
Through
Loans, grants, and crucially, technical expertise, all focused on economic development, reducing poverty, building infrastructure, founded December 1945, also from Bretton Woods.
Okay, 5 institutions. Can you quickly break those down for us?
Sure. The 2 main lending parts are the IBRD International Bank for Reconstruction and Development that lends to middle-income countries.
Right.
And the IDA International Development Association, that's the soft loan window, offering interest-free loans and grants to the very poorest countries.
Okay, IBRD and IDA. What are the others?
Then you have the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, which focuses on boosting the private sector in developing countries. MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, offers insurance against political risks for investment.
Like instability or conflict.
Exactly. And finally, ICSID, the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, which handles disagreements between foreign investors and states.
And India's relationship with the World Bank, given its development goals.
India is deeply engaged. It's a founding member and historically one of the biggest borrowers globally.
From both IBRD and ID.
Yes, receiving significant support from both. It's a member of all the institutions within the bank group except for ICSAB.
Okay, that makes sense. Financial stability, development. The third leg is trade, right? How does the world manage all the rules for buying and selling across borders? That must be the WTO.
The World Trade Organization, yes, that's its job. It's the main body regulating international trade rules.
So it sets the rules.
Yeah.
What else?
It acts as the place for countries to negotiate new trade deals, and very importantly, it has a system for settling trade disputes when countries disagree. It grew out of an earlier agreement called GATT T2.
The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade.
Exactly. The WTO itself was established January 1st, 1995. That came after long negotiations, the Uruguay round, finalized by the Marrakesh Agreement in Morocco. Its home is Geneva, Switzerland.
And what kinds of agreements does it oversee?
Key ones include the original GATA, now updated, which covers trade in goods, think manufactured products, agricultural goods.
Okay.
Then there's GATS, the General Agreement on Trade and Services, covering things like banking, tourism, telecommunications, and TRIPS, which is trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights that protects things like patents, copyrights, trademarks internationally.
So quite encompassing. And India's stance within the WTO.
India is a founding member and a very influential voice, particularly for developing nations.
How so?
It's been very active in the Doha Development Agenda talks, often pushing back against agricultural subsidies in developed countries, which they argue hurt farmers in poorer nations, and fighting for what's called special and differential treatment, basically, arguing that developing countries need more flexibility in trade rules to help them grow.
Makes sense. Okay, from money and trade, let's shift focus. Global health, basic human dignity. Starting with one that's maybe less known but really impactful. The Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria.
Yes, the Global Fund. And it's important to note this one is not a UN agency.
Oh, interesting. What is it then?
It's a partnership, really, a financing mechanism. It raises money and invests it directly into programs fighting these 3 diseases run by local experts in the countries hit hardest. Formed in 2002, based in Geneva.
So it doesn't run its own programs?
No, it funds local solutions. And its model is quite innovative. It was proposed by Kofi Annan, operates as a public-private partnership, gets voluntary funding.
Okay.
But the really interesting part is its performance-based funding.
Meaning?
Meaning they only release the money when the programs show actual results. It's not just about sending aid, it's about achieving impact.
Wow, that sounds demanding, but effective.
Incredibly effective. It really drives accountability. As of 2023, they estimate it's saved 59 million lives.
59 million, that's staggering.
And cut the death rates from AIDS, TB, and malaria by over half in the countries where they invest. India is actually both a recipient of funds and a donor to the Global Fund.
Okay. Now, the big one in global health, the WHO, the World Health Organization.
Right. The WHO is a specialized UN agency. Its focus is international public health.
What does that mean in practice? Setting rules?
Yes, setting global health standards is key. Also, coordinating responses to health emergencies, think pandemics, and providing technical advice. It's primarily a normative and technical body.
Meaning it sets norms and gives advice, but isn't mainly a funding channel like the Global Fund.
Correct. Its constitution was adopted April 7th, 1948. That date is now World Health Day, formally set up in Geneva. The idea came out of that same post-war UN organizing conference in 1945.
Another piece of that initial global architecture. Key roles today.
Developing the international health regulations crucial for pandemic coordination. Running big vaccination efforts like COVAX for COVID-19 vaccines. Setting medical standards generally.
And India's involvement?
Founding member. India actually hosts the WHO's Southeast Asia Regional Office in New Delhi, and collaborates very closely on things like polio eradication, a huge success story, and the COVID-19 response.
So WHO covers broad public health. But there's another key UN player focused specifically on children, right? UNICEF.
UNICEF, yes, absolutely vital. A UN agency focused squarely on protecting children's rights.
And providing aid.
Humanitarian aid and development support, making sure kids have access to essentials. Health, education, nutrition, clean water and sanitation, protection from harm.
Its backstory is quite moving, isn't it?
It is. Founded December 11th, 1946. Its original name tells the story. United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. Created specifically to help children suffering in the aftermath of World War II in Europe.
Wow.
It was made a permanent UN agency in 1953, but kept the well-known acronym UNICEF. Its headquarters are in New York.
And its impact areas today.
Still focused on child health, nutrition, wash water, sanitation, hygiene education, child protection, immunization campaigns, emergency relief. And notably, UNICEF won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 1965.
For promoting brotherhood among nations. A powerful statement about children and peace.
Indeed. In India, UNICEF runs a very large country program, supporting government initiatives like Poshan Abhiyan for nutrition and the Swachh Bharat mission for cleanliness.
Speaking of Nobel Peace Prizes, there's another winner focused on a fundamental need, the World Food Program, WFP.
Yes, the WFP. It's the UN's food assistance arm, and it's the world's largest humanitarian organization fighting hunger.
Largest in the world.
Focused on eradicating hunger and malnutrition. It provides food aid in emergencies, but also supports longer-term food security. Based in Rome, Italy.
How did it start? Was it also post-WWII?
A bit later, actually. Founded in 1961, initially as just a 3-year experiment.
An experiment?
Yeah, proposed by U.S. President Eisenhower. But it was so successful, it was made permanent in 1965.
And its functions? Beyond just handing out food.
It does provide emergency food assistance, which is critical in disasters or conflicts, but it also runs school feeding programs, which help keep kids in school.
Right.
And increasingly uses cash or voucher programs, which can help support local markets while still getting aid to people. And as you said, WFP won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020.
For combating hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. That's a chilling phrase.
Yeah.
How does WFP actually do that on the ground?
It's incredibly challenging. In conflict zones, food access can be deliberately cut off or food used to control populations. WFP often has to negotiate at great risk to get humanitarian corridors open to deliver aid. They also work on building resilience in communities, trying to make them less vulnerable to food shortages being used against them. In India, WFP partners with the government on improving nutrition programs and making the public distribution system more efficient.
Okay. And rounding up this focus on basic needs, there's the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization. How does it differ from WFP?
Good question. While WFP is primarily about food assistance and logistics, FAO is more focused on the systems behind food.
Meaning?
It leads international efforts to end hunger by improving food security and supporting agricultural development, farming, fisheries, forestry. Its motto is Fiat Panis, let there be bread.
Also based in Rome.
Yes, like WFP, FAO was founded earlier, though October 16th, 1945 in Quebec City. That date is now World Food Day.
Ah, another post-war creation tackling the food crisis then.
Exactly. Its work involves collecting global data on food and agriculture, really important for understanding trends, providing technical help to countries, supporting them during food crises.
And India's connection.
India is a founding member and collaborates closely with FAO on food security issues. A recent example. India really pushed for 2023 to be declared the International Year of Millets.
Right, remember that.
FAO strongly supported that, promoting millets as a nutritious and sustainable food source.
Okay, fascinating. Let's pivot now to organizations that deal with, say, how we work, our culture, how we connect globally. First up, the International Labor Organization, ILO.
The ILO. This one has a really unique structure.
How so?
It's the only UN agency that's tripartite?
Tripartite, meaning three parts.
Yes. It brings governments, employers' organizations, and workers' organizations like trade unions together at the same table.
To discuss labor issues.
To promote social justice and set internationally recognized labor rights.
And its history is remarkable, isn't it? It's much older than the UN itself.
Much older. It was founded way back in 1919 as part of the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. It was a direct response to the terrible working conditions that came with industrialization and the idea that lack of social justice could threaten peace.
So, peace through fair labor standards.
That's the core idea. It only became the first specialized agency of the UN in 1946. Headquarters are in Geneva.
And its achievements. Besides just existing for so long.
It sets international labor standards, essentially conventions and recommendations on everything from working hours to safety to freedom of association. It promotes rights at work, encourages job creation, works on social protection like pensions and unemployment benefits. And like UNICEF and WFP, it also won the Nobel Peace Prize.
When was that?
1969, again for promoting peace through social justice. India was a founding member way back in 1919.
Since the beginning.
And it has ratified several key ILO conventions, including important ones on minimum age for work and eliminating the worst forms of child labor.
Incredible longevity.
Yeah.
Okay, from labor rights to culture and education. UNESCO.
UNESCO, the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Its mandate is really broad.
Covering.
Promoting education for all, advancing science, fostering cultural understanding, protecting freedom of expression, and maybe what it's most famous for, protecting cultural heritage.
Like the World Heritage Sites.
Exactly. That's a UNESCO program. It was established November 16, 1945, in London. The core idea was that wars begin in the minds of men, so defenses of peace must be constructed there too.
Through understanding and cooperation.
Through international cooperation in education, science, and culture, promoting mutual understanding to prevent conflict. Its headquarters are in Paris.
And the heritage work goes beyond just buildings. Right?
No, yes. There are the famous World Heritage Sites, but also the intangible cultural heritage list, things like traditional festivals, crafts, performing arts, and the Memory of the World program, which works to preserve important documentary heritage, like archives and manuscripts.
And India's connection here.
India is a founding member and very active. It has, I think, 42 World Heritage Sites now, like the Taj Mahal, Ajanta Caves, recently Santiniketan.
Impressive.
And 14 items on the intangible cultural heritage list, including things like yoga, Kumbh Mela, Durga Puja in Kolkata.
Okay. Now, an agency we probably rely on daily without thinking about it. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO.
The WMO, yes, often overlooked, but absolutely crucial. It's the UN specialized agency for cooperation in meteorology weather forecasting.
And related fields.
Climatology, hydrology, water resources, and geophysics. Its work provides the basis for early warnings for storms, floods, droughts.
This one also has surprisingly deep roots, doesn't it?
It does. The WMO itself was formed in 1950, but its predecessor, the International Meteorological Organization, goes all the way back to 1873.
1873. Why so early?
Because weather doesn't respect borders. As soon as things like shipping and early aviation started needing reliable forecasts across countries, you needed cooperation on how to collect and share weather data.
Makes perfect sense. Headquarters in Geneva. And March 23rd is World Meteorological Day.
Correct. Its work is fundamental. It standardizes how weather and climate data is collected and shared globally. That's vital for aviation safety, agriculture, disaster planning, managing water.
Everything, really.
Pretty much. India's meteorological department is the country's representative at WMO, and WMO provides vital support for things like cyclone forecasting in the Indian Ocean and improving monsoon predictions.
Okay. From weather to how we fly. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO.
ICAO, another specialized UN agency. This one sets the global rules for international air transport.
So it tells airlines what to do.
Not quite. It's not an airline regulator in that sense. It sets the standards and policies that countries agree to follow to ensure aviation is safe, secure, and efficient globally.
Ah, the framework that allows international flights to operate smoothly.
Exactly. Born out of the Chicago Convention on December 7th, 1944, that's now International Civil Aviation Day. Again, post-war need for order.
To manage the expected boom in international air travel safely.
Yes. Standardizing rules for how planes operate, air navigation systems, even airport infrastructure standards. Its headquarters are in Montreal, Canada.
And how does it enforce these standards?
It develops SARP standards and recommended practices. Countries that are members agree to implement these. ICAO also monitors aviation safety through audits and other programs.
And India.
Founding member. It actually hosts a civil aviation training center in Hyderabad that gets support from ICAO. And India participates fully in the safety audits and standard setting.
Okay. Now, how we communicate globally. The ITU, International Telecommunication Union.
Ah, the ITU. This one holds a special record.
Which is?
It's the oldest UN specialized agency.
Older than the ILO?
Even older. Founded May 17th, 1865.
1865. What was it for back then?
It started as the International Telegraph Union.
Malgograph.
Yes. To standardize the rules and technical aspects so telegraph messages could cross borders reliably, it became a UN agency in 1947. Headquarters in Geneva. May 17th is World Telecommunication and Information Society Day.
Its role must have changed dramatically since 1865.
Massively. From telegraphs, it expanded to cover telephones, then radio, then satellites. Now its mandate includes the internet, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, 5G standards.
So it manages the technical backbone of global communication.
Yeah, in a big way.
Yeah.
Crucially, it allocates global radio frequency spectrum, making sure mobile phones, Wi-Fi, satellite signals don't interfere with each other, and it manages satellite orbits.
Essential unseen work.
Yeah.
How is it structured?
It has three main sectors. ITUT focuses on telecommunication standards. ITUR deals with radio communication and spectrum management, and ITUD works on digital development, bridging the digital divide.
And India's role in this very old, very modern agency.
India's been a member since 1869, not long after it was founded.
Wow.
It's been elected to the ITU Council, its governing body, many times, and collaborates on things like the FratNet project to bring broadband to rural India and national preparations for 5G.
Okay, one more specialized agency. UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization.
UNIDO. This one focuses on promoting industrial development, but with a specific angle.
Which is?
Inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So helping developing countries grow their industries to create jobs and economic growth, but doing it in a way that's environmentally sustainable.
When did this one come about?
It started as a UN program in 1966, then became a full specialized agency on January 1st, 1986. Its headquarters are in Vienna, Austria.
And what kind of work does it do?
Provides technical assistance, policy advice, especially on things like green industry and supporting small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, capacity building to help countries industrialize smartly.
India's involvement.
Founding member. Collaborates with UNIDO on initiatives around smart manufacturing, cleaner production techniques, energy efficiency, and industry. India also hosts a UNIDO regional office in New Delhi.
Okay, and just briefly, you mentioned another key player, not a UN agency, but vital in health.
Right, worth mentioning JME, the Vaccine Alliance.
What is this model?
It's another public-private global health partnership founded in 2000. Its main goal is boosting access to vaccines in the world's poorest countries.
Wow.
By helping fund vaccine procurement, strengthening delivery systems, supporting the cold chain needed to keep vaccines effective.
Yeah.
It was a co-leader of the COVAX initiative for COVID-19 vaccines.
Its impact.
Huge! JVI estimates it's helped vaccinate over 1 billion children since 2000, preventing something like 17 million deaths.
Incredible. And India's role.
India is interesting because it's both receives support from JVI for its own immunization programs, but it's also a major supplier of vaccines purchased through JVI for other countries. A dual role.
Okay, that's a lot of organizations.
It is, and if we try to tie this all together, connect it back to the bigger picture, what really strikes me is just the sheer range of human cooperation these bodies represent.
Right, covering almost every aspect of life.
Often, as we saw, born out of terrible crises, wars, depressions, health emergencies. Yet they persist. They adapt. They try to tackle new challenges. It shows this ongoing human effort to build systems for cooperation.
Absolutely. So hopefully you listening now have a much clearer map of this global architecture, how bodies like the UN, the WHO, the WTO, the ILO, the Global Fund, how they actually shape peace, health, the economy.
Even how we travel and communicate.
Touching our lives constantly, even if we don't always see it directly.
Which maybe leads to a final thought. We've seen how these organizations were often created in response to specific 20th century crises.
Mm-hmm.
So the question for today, in our very interconnected but also quite fractured world, what are the new global challenges? Things maybe beyond traditional wars or financial crashes like climate change impacts, mass migration, the ethics of AI, future pandemics.
Right. Challenges that don't fit neatly into the old boxes.
Exactly. How might these new pressures force these international organizations to adapt again, to maybe even evolve their core mandates to stay effective in the 21st century?
That's a really interesting question. Something for you to definitely mull over.
Yeah.
We certainly hope this deep dive gave you some aha moments, and maybe that promised shortcut to feeling genuinely well-informed about this complex global system.